This time it was sad because I wasn't, it was the goodbye was happening at the other end. I was saying goodbye to my mom and my dad and my friends and my family, and that was really tough. Hi explorers! No Morgan this week, just myself, Chris, and this week I want to talk about my story, my permanent move from the UK to the US. Ever since I was very little, I'd always wanted to go to the US. I'd always seen it in the movies and in TV shows and so many cool sites, New York and Disneyland, and I just always wanted to go to the US. I decided I wanted to take a break, slow things down, take a gap year, and go to the US. And the way that I decided to do this was to get a job, a summer job, as a camp counselor in Pennsylvania. And it was at a camp called Camp Cayuga. And that is where I met Morgan. If you are thinking about taking some time off and wanting to explore the US, I highly recommend becoming a camp counselor. It's one of the most rewarding jobs I've ever had, and it didn't even feel like a job. I made so many friends while working in the US, and it was just such a fun time. And not only that, after the camp had finished, because of the visa that I was on, it allowed me to travel around the US and see all these really cool, unique sites that I'd always dreamed of visiting. So if you are thinking about becoming a camp counselor, do it. Morgan and I then decided that we were going to go back to the summer camp that we originally met working at the previous summer, because that was a great way for us to spend some more time together. It would allow us to travel together a little bit after too. And at this point, we'd only been together for around 6 months. However, when you know, right? And I think she maybe suspected it also, but that was when I popped the question. And it was very beautiful. I had a whole thing set out with candles on the lake and fireworks, and we rode out into the lake and saw fireworks, and it was beautiful. We were in a long distance relationship, and it is tough. And to couples that are going through long distance relationships, hang in there, because it's totally worth it, I promise. But it is very tough. You don't know when you're going to see each other next. You try to spend as much time with each other as you can. There was a lot of tears. I mean, every time I flew to see Morgan, obviously there was tears of joy and we were happy to be with each other. But then when we had to say goodbye at the airport, it was lots of tears of sadness. And it was a very hard time. Like emotionally, it was a hard time for both of us. But we knew that we had to finish up school and we had to do things the right way and the smart way. Once I had finished school, Morgan and I had a conversation about what was next, what we were going to do. We made the choice that I was going to move to the US. We just thought there was probably better opportunities for work in our fields. We're both in a media field, and we thought that we would fare a lot better if we were living and working in the US. So then the process started with figuring out how to make this work. And so there's something called a Fiance Visa. We were already engaged, and so we went for the Fiance Visa. And I had to go to London, and I had to get my medical, and I think around $1,500 later, 7 months later, then I finally had my visa. And it's really hard up until that point, because once you file for that Fiance Visa, you don't know when you're going to get it. I mean, you have a rough time frame, but you can't book any flight to go until you know you have your visa. So we didn't know when we were going to see each other next, and that was a really long stretch of time. I was so excited once I had received my visa back. I called Morgan. I was just so thrilled. I finally have it. We can book our flight. We can figure out the wedding. And I was just so excited that I hadn't even given much thought to all of the support systems in my life at that point, like my mom, my dad, my brother, my sister, my best friends, my grandparents, uncles, everybody that has always kind of been there for me throughout my whole life. And I had to say goodbye to them. And that was a really hard time, because you don't know if you're going to see, when you're going to see them next. It's the same as, leaving Morgan. I didn't know when I was going to see her next. And all these people have been in my life, my whole life. And now I had to say goodbye to them and start my own chapter of my life. And that was just a really hard concept, and I said goodbye to everybody. And my best friend came with me to the airport with my mom and my dad when I finally flew flew out, and it was so weird booking a one-way ticket because I'd never done that before. Just booked a one-way ticket, knowing that I don't have to come back, and it really hit me when I was at the airport at the security gates. Like, I had to hug my mom and had to hug my dad and my best friend, and I just knew, like, man, like, I wasn't expecting those tears because I was always so, like, excited to go see Morgan, but this time it was sad because I wasn't. It was, the goodbye was happening at the other end. I was saying goodbye to my mom and my dad and my friends and my family, and that was really tough. But once I got through that part, I got on the plane, I wiped away those tears, and I was just so excited to get there and figure out our lives together. So we had 90 days to get married, which is what you have once you land on a Fiance Visa. You have 90 days to get married. And so we had a lot of planning. I think at the time Morgan was working for the Grand Hotel on Mackinac Island, and we were going through this process of, like, a lot of it was us working ourselves, doing it ourselves, trying to figure out how we're going to make it happen. With the help of Morgan's parents too, they were very good. And 90 days is no joke to plan a wedding and get everything figured out. So I don't know how we did it, but we did it. My best friend and my parents came, and brother, but like people like my grandparents who had health conditions, they couldn't make it. So that was really hard for me too. But we managed to, I think we had like Skype at the time on a laptop, so they were able to watch the ceremony through Skype, which was awesome. So here we are, newlyweds, excited to start our lives together, and we are living with Morgan's parents. Not ideal for newlyweds. However, they were so supportive at the time, and it really allowed us to find our feet and figure out the next steps. Morgan was finishing up college and internships, and I couldn't even work for a period of time after we got married. I had to apply for a temporary work visa, and then I finally got my first job at Panera Bread. Now, I just finished university. I worked really hard, and I got like I got my honors degree, and I was excited to work in the film and TV field. And I'm working at Panera. I spent so many years working in the food industry at Pizza Hut in England, and now I'm working in the food again, living in the US. Not ideal, but a good job. Made some great friends there, and I was able to. I think I was only there for 6 months until I found my next job, working at a TV station. Things were going great. I landed this job working in the TV field and as a commercial producer, and Morgan was finishing up college still. And then something happened. It was hard. This was a really hard point for me, because I found out that my grandma, who has since passed away, had developed pancreatic cancer. And that was such a hard time for me I'd always went to her house. Like when I lived in England, I would just pop over for, coffee and a chat, and whenever I wanted, because she lived like 10 minutes from my house. And now I couldn't do that. I could call her and talk to her, and I did a lot, but it's just so hard to not be able to just pop over to my nan's and say hi and give her a big hug and a big squeeze. Fortunately, my new job, they were so understanding, and they let me. Morgan and I flew out to surprise my nan, actually, and we got to see her and spend a bit of time with her.
Oh my God! How did you get here?
On a plane.
Oh my God! Oh.
I love you.
I love you. Oh my God.
I've since then I've lost, since I moved to the US permanently, I've lost 2 grandmas, I've lost a granddad, and I've missed out on some time with them because I decided to move to the US and live my life here. Morgan then finished up her degree, and her internship turned into a full-time job. So we're both working in the media field at this point, and we are looking at each other like, yeah, this is probably a good time for us to buy a home. We're financially stable, we have money, let's start the next chapter in our own home. And so we moved into this house. In fact, we bought this house, and we're taking wallpaper off the walls, and we're fixing it up. And I think it was a month into owning this house, we found out we were expecting our firstborn, Jonah. Jonah. Say hi, Jonah. Say hello. Ah, Jonah. Here I am, married. We're living in our home. We have our first child, Jonah. Second one, Jude, on the way. Little brother. Say hi. And I decided that I didn't want to keep renewing my green card and being in this limbo zone. I wanted to become a US citizen. So I filed the paperwork, and I think it took about 6 or 8 months, and I became a US citizen.
Check it out.
This week's Explorer shoutout goes to 7 in All, an awesome family with Michigan ties, and they are currently living in China. Thank you guys so much for watching. I know it was a little bit different this week, listening to my story about my move from the UK to the US. Hopefully, if you're in a similar situation, it can help you. Comment down below. Are you thinking of moving countries? Like, where are you hoping to move to? And where are you moving from? Would love to hear it. And please, if you haven't already, subscribe, ring that bell for notifications. And if you like this video, please smash that like button. See you next week. Adios. When I was younger, a lot younger than I am now. What is wrong with you? You bloody weirdo. Okay, is that too cheesy? Maybe.